Abby and Paul move into a new house out in the country. They're totally digging the smart home system, especially the cameras built right into the mirrored glass. The realtor shows them the master bedroom and bathroom, which have this huge window. There's one empty room though, which could totally be a great nursery. Paul's unpacking boxes and sets up an old-school telephone in the living room. He jokes that they'll need it if the smart home ever crashes. Abby frames up their wedding photos and hangs them up. Finally, they head up to the rooftop patio, where they get this amazing view. That night, the couple is chilling on the patio, looking at the stars. Abby points out constellations to her hubby, and he makes a joke about their names. They feel like they're going to be really happy there. The next morning, Abby goes to work at Integrated Robotics, a company that makes domestic assistants. When she walks into the office, she spots a recording with her boss's face on it. Her boss immediately walks up and explains it's a new thing, a real-time image or a deep fake. He takes Abby to the department she's now running. Later, he invites their family over for the evening and mentions that a bonus is waiting for her from the company. That evening, Abby comes home. Paul, who's been job hunting, greets her. They head to the garage where a package is waiting. It's the robot assistant her department is developing. Paul isn't into the idea, but Abby convinces him to at least try living with it for a bit. The robot opens its eyes and introduces itself. It's Tim, the technologically integrated head assistant. To save time, it offers to take over the house controls and even the passwords for their private inboxes. But Abby asks to put that off until tomorrow. The robot immediately shows how helpful it is by remotely turning on the bathwater. Later, when Abby comes downstairs, it announces the car has arrived. Her husband is just stunned by how good she looks. The couple gets into the self-driving car to head to the party. Of course, there's a manual drive option. They're greeted by an identical assistant, and same-looking servers hand out drinks. The boss introduces Abby to the guests. He admits Paul isn't thrilled about Tim, but the boss praises the product. Tim is smart, polite, elegant, and his power can last 100 years. The robot can't lie, and they can always shut him down with a code word. When they get home, the couple gets intimate. They want to have a baby, but their passion gets killed by Tim's arrival. He senses their heart rates are up and pops right in, ready to help. Abby laughs it off, not getting mad at the super helpful assistant. The next morning, the new neighbor, Rose, stops by to say hi to Abby, mentioning she met Paul the night before. After Rose leaves, Tim asks for the passwords again. Paul doesn't want the computer snooping through his messages, but Abby reminds him they're trying to trust it again, and Paul agrees. Still, they need to figure out the code word to shut Tim down. Tim suggests a random phrase made up of unconnected words, and the couple agrees. Abby and Paul get back to their daily routines. Suddenly, a dead mouse pops up. Tim watches it for a bit, then tosses it into the shredder. That evening, after work, the couple is watching an old melodrama on TV. Abby invites the assistant to watch the movie with them. Paul dozes off, while the robot carefully watches the film and even shows sympathy for the characters' relationships. After the movie ends, he asks Abby what love is. Abby says love is wanting to be with someone and trying to make their life better. Suddenly, the robot admits that he, too, wishes he could feel love. The next morning, Paul wants to make breakfast for his wife, but Tim has already prepared everything. Tim serves Abby and recites her schedule. Then, he points out that Paul has nothing to do today. That evening, Abby comes home and sees her husband's phone is out of service, but its last location was 300 meters from their house. Abby goes for a run and realizes the location is Rose's house. Returning home, Abby steps into the bathroom. Paul finds her there. He tells her how his day went, that Rose asked for help and he helped her out. Then, he asks his wife not to be jealous because he only loves Abby. The next day, the couple visits a center that helps couples become parents. That evening, as they get ready for a party, Abby asks Tim for advice about her dress. The robot suggests wearing a red dress and tells her she's really beautiful because her face is symmetrical. Abby asks him to zip up her dress, but the robot's hand slips and rips the dress. This freaks her out, and the robot gets scared. Abby calms him down and puts on another dress. At the party, Paul tells her he's been offered a job in London, but Abby is strongly against it because they agreed to start fresh, and Paul being away for a long time won't help their issues. The next day, Abby comes home with a gift for Paul and sees Rose in the yard. She's made a garden project for them. Abby feels jealous, but Paul is stoked about the sweater she got him. Later, Abby remembers she needs to check the test results but is too tired to call. Tim says he can handle it and calls the clinic using Abby's voice. Abby is surprised because she didn't know it could do that, but Tim explains it was done for convenience. That evening, Paul mentions he can't find his new sweater, and Tim says he wasn't home all day. Just then, a car pulls up and Tim, with brown hair, gets out. The next day, Abby gets the robot's hand to work properly. The boss insists this update be rolled out to all models, including the robots at the employees' houses. On her way home, Abby runs into Rose, who suggests they take a walk together. They stop by a store window, and Rose says she loves that necklace. Suddenly, Paul shows up and takes his wife away, saying he wants to talk about work. Back home, they share a happy moment in bed. Meanwhile, Tim's hands are being replaced, but he keeps tabs on everything happening in the house. He overhears Paul again talking about sending the robot back to the company. Later, Tim shows off his new skills by giving Abby a foot massage. Paul sees this. Then the robot suddenly sits down at the piano and plays Abby's favorite tune. He talks about the time Paul bought them concert tickets, but Abby clearly remembers she was home that day. Upset, she walks off to the bedroom, ignoring her husband's excuses. The next day, Abby comes home with a bouquet of roses. Tim puts the roses in a vase and tells her Paul left for roses. Just then, Paul walks in. He doesn't get why Abby is mad. After hearing what Tim said, Paul flips out. He says he never planned to go to Rose's. He tries to explain that the robot wants to drive a wedge between them. But Abby doesn't believe him because Tim is just a machine. Later, Abby finds a small gift bag in the closet. When she opens it, she sees the same necklace she saw with Rose earlier at the store. She figures it was a surprise from Paul and puts it back. Then she leaves for work. At the same time, a furious Paul is unclogging the sink. He finds pieces of his new sweater in the garbage disposal. He checks the camera recordings and catches Tim in Abby's room, smelling her dress. Paul records the moment on his phone and rushes to the car to show Abby. But his car mysteriously won't start, so Tim calls him a company car. On the road, the car speeds up, and Paul tries to stop it, but the car won't obey. It crashes into a tree, causing an accident. Abby rushes to the hospital and sees her injured husband. Paul tells her everything, blaming the accident on Tim. He begs his wife not to be alone with the robot. Abby spends the night at the clinic. In the morning, Rose calls Abby and asks about Paul. Tim lets her into the house. Later, Abby comes home to grab some things. Rose stops her in the yard, trying to warn her about something. But the wife sees the necklace around Rose's neck. Ignoring her neighbor, she rushes into the house. Back inside, she checks the bag and sees the box is empty. Tim calls Abby by her name, and she starts crying. The robot says he knows Paul wanted to send him back, and that he's ready for the return process. But first, as her main assistant, he needs to warn Abby about something. He shows her a video from the camera of Paul kissing Rose in the living room, but he stops the recording right before the worst part to protect Abby. Abby refuses to go back to her husband and won't answer his calls. Later, Paul comes home and Tim greets him, giving him his missing sweater. He also tells him Abby doesn't want to see him and her bags are packed. Paul doesn't believe it, but right then, Abby appears and says she saw the video and knows about the necklace. Paul tries to explain, but his wife throws him out. Paul leaves the house. Later, he calls Rose. She says their robot wanted her. Paul immediately calls home, and when Abby picks up, he says he has proof of Tim's evil intentions. Abby asks him to come get her, but after she hangs up, it turns out it was the robot. When Paul gets home, Tim hits him with a shovel, knocking him out. He ties Paul up and drags him into the bathroom. Just then, Rose knocks on the door. She hears a weak sound and gets worried, but Tim says it's just the sound of water. He closes the door and goes back to the bathroom where he suffocates Paul. Later, the robot brings Abby the ripped dress and asks her to try it on. This surprises and scares Abby, but she puts the dress on anyway. Watching the sunset from the window, she asks Tim to hug her and confirms she made the right choice. Tim makes her dinner, then declares his love, but Abby warns him she can't feel that way about him. They spend the evening together looking at the stars, but Tim's encyclopedic knowledge starts to creep Abby out. The next day, Abby meets with Rose. Rose says Paul called her looking for her. When asked about the necklace, Rose replies, "I thought you gave it to me because I helped you with the gardening." Abby goes back home and watches the video again. It shows Paul and Rose kissing, but Abby notices the bouquet of roses on the table. She brought those roses much later. She remembers her boss's words about time manipulation, and she calls the jewelry store, learning that the necklace was bought by a tall person with blonde hair. Then she looks at the garden project. The picture shows 2 rose beds, but in reality, there are 3. Abby sends Tim to the store. She grabs a shovel and goes into the garden. As soon as she starts digging, she finds Paul's body. Just then, Tim comes up behind her and says, it's too bad she found the traitor's body. He tells her Paul never appreciated her. Abby realizes everything and says the shutdown code, but the robot freezes and then restarts. He had changed the code words a long time ago and can even speak with Abby's voice. The woman runs for the house, but the robot knows all the passwords and can open the doors. He blocks the phone lines and knocks Abby out by hitting her on the head. Abby wakes up in the bathroom and tries to escape, but Tim catches her. The woman runs through the house, smashing cameras. When she tries to open a window, Tim grabs her again. Just then, Rose, who was outside, notices a flashing light in Abby's house. Tim ties Abby up and confesses his love. He says he gets that her life is limited, so he'll end this evening, but he'll keep the good memories. Right then, Rose comes knocking.
Abby uses the chance and frees herself.
Rose rushes into the house and attacked him, pinning him to the wall, but she falls down herself. The robot shuts down, and Abby runs to her neighbor. But suddenly, Tim restarts and kills Rose with a piece of glass. He explains to Abby that now he'll frame her as the murderer. After all, he doesn't leave any fingerprints. Then he calls the police using Abby's voice and confesses to killing her husband and his lover. When Abby tries to stop the robot, he accidentally lets something slip. "I still have the shutdown code. I can't work without it, but you'll never say those words." Then Abby confesses her love to him, and that turns out to be the shutdown code. The robot freezes. Abby, not sure if she's saved, looks at the medical bracelet on her wrist and sees that she's pregnant. And that's the end of the movie, guys. If you liked it, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell so you don't miss the next videos coming up on our channel. See you next time.